Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 117. Man, do you know how close you guys were to getting a completely listenable podcast? A lot more so than usual. More unlistenable than usual. I did a full clean of my PC today. I took it out. I brushed it off. Hey, turns out that an old toothbrush, really good for getting behind the fans of a CPU fan, the fins of a CPU fan. And then when I took everything inside and plugged it back in, some stuff got a little wonky. Namely, something with my audio drivers, and it was this close to being completely blown out. I switched, made sure that it was detecting my correct microphone, and then boom, everything was like 10 times louder than it should have been, or it was picking it up 10 times louder. The gain was insane, dude. My microphone was slamming protein, just chicken, beans, rice. The gains were ridiculous, so I had to turn that down a lot. And now, it should sound fine. I'm recording this. Okay, so we got no comments, no questions from last time. So I'm just gonna jump straight into the stuff that I want to talk about this week, which is a lot. Hopefully, I can actually get through all of it. We'll try. Okay, so. I am writing the way that I split this stuff up, we have eye stuff and hand stuff this week. And usually I put the eyeball stuff at the front, but I'm going to talk, we're going to split this up a little bit. We're going to get a little experimental, and we're going to start on on a hands thing, and then we're going to go to an eyeball thing. And where are we going to go after that? I don't know. I have no idea. The reason I'm starting off with a hands thing, that being a video game, is because earlier today, I started Titanfall 2, and I finished Titanfall 2, like maybe 30 minutes ago, less. And I want to talk about it because I just finished the campaign. Hot damn, that was good. So, why was I playing Titanfall 2? Well, it was a game that I've owned it and the original on Steam for years now. For years, like there was a $2 sale for both of them, something like 3 or 4 years ago. So I picked them up and figured, someday. And then that whole thing happened where the game lost support so hard that you couldn't open it up, or you might expose your computer to people trying to inject scripts and stuff in. So I was okay. I'm not even going to install it for the time being, and it just kind of sat in my Steam library for the longest time until just recently. I was hearing these rumblings that Apex Legends, which is a game that looks, I've always thought things about Apex looked fun. I just hate team games. I am not a team player. I'm a solo guy. I don't like team games. I don't like getting matched up with randos. It seems like it's so unnecessarily frustrating. So the things like the movement look fun, all that looks cool. But I've never really felt the desire to actually go in and try it, I've never wanted to go in and try it. And I heard, hey, Titanfall is basically just Apex, but what if it was if it wasn't a team game? Well, a team game in the sense that, it's not like a battle royale. I'm also not too interested in battle royales as a genre. I don't know, seems like a lot of waiting around. I just want to shoot things. God damn it! I'm an ape brain. So I heard, there's been so many people bemoaning the loss of Titanfall, and it always seemed really cool. I love mechs. You guys know I love robots. And recently there were these rumblings that Apex was going to, Respawn was going to be resurrecting Titanfall in some way. Titanfall 2. The other TF2 shooter. And it seems like something like that happened. The servers are back up and it's supported, and there's like an anti-cheat and all that. It's like safe to play. And I thought, you know what? Now is as good a time as ever to go check out this game. How long do I really have? I decided to install it. And just today I was like, let me start the campaign at least, because this game has a campaign. I don't think the original does. It was just multiplayer, but Titanfall 2 has a campaign. Wow, that was really fun. I don't know if I could say that much more about Titanfall 2. You guys know I can say a lot more about anything. I won't kid myself. I won't kid you. So, Titanfall 2... Man, I feel like I'm really late to the party on it, but goddamn, it is fucking fun. I adore the movement in this game. If you're not familiar, Titanfall 2, the idea behind Titanfall is it's these big mass multiplayer battles where players have the ability to call in these big mechs. Not like city-sized mechs, just like maybe two or three cars stacked on top of each other sized mechs called Titans, which fall from the sky. And that naturally means that if a map is going to be able to support big-ass robots walking around and shooting at each other and zooming and dodging and dashing, they have to be pretty big. So how do you compensate for a robot that's really big? For theoretically every player on the map could be in a big ass robot at any given time. Not any given time. I think you unlock it at some point. Like you have to build up to calling it. It's something like that. I haven't checked out the multiplayer yet. Let's just say you have to support 16 at least people in big ass robots. Well, the maps have to be really big. So how do you make the maps really big without harming the on the ground, the pilot, the boots on the ground fighting? How do you make that not miserable? Well, you just give it crazy movement. You give everyone crazy movement. The universal movement options in this game are so fun. Gosh, and I'm sure that there's probably more stuff that I don't know of that's like multiplayer specific. But this game has some really nice just dash and slide things. Well, not dash, but like a run, like a sprint into a slide, into a sprint again. Really where it gets sick is with the wall running. Pretty much any surface can be, that's sufficiently flat, can be run on. And you have a double jump. So what I figured out, it was fun to kind of... the campaign was a really good... I call it these sorts of things roller coaster campaigns. Like, that's how I described Space Marine, right? This game has a roller coaster campaign. It's a very short, sweet, like, under 6 hours. What does Steam say? What does Steam say about the old TIF2? The Toofty. 5.7 hours. So, not very long, but from beginning to end, this kind of continuous, very linear, just shoot you straight through a tube kind of experience where you're going to get basically the full range of the game. There's a bunch of these different Titan classes. You're going to get a bunch. You're going to get to check out, pretty sure by the end, all of them? I want to say all of them you get by the end. And you can freely switch between them in the campaign. And then you get a full tour of a bunch of weapons. I don't know all, but a bunch of weapons for the pilot. All the guns and the grenades and the whatses and the whooses. And it's a really good way to get to grips with things like just the general combat, some of the core mechanics, as well as the movement mechanics. It was a joy to learn how wall running works in this game. So you essentially have so you can run on a wall, but you can only run for about 3 seconds before you'll sort of fall off. You don't have enough momentum to keep running on the wall forever. But after you, excuse me, after you leave the wall, you can jump. So your double jump, right? Your mid-air jump, it refreshes every time you touch a surface. Every time your feet touch a surface, which includes hitting the ground and also includes wall running, which means that you can do very fun, if there's like a corridor, a hallway, you can do some very fun backwards and forwards wall running that feels great. And the way that the physics work, the shorter wall runs into like a long jump gains you a lot of momentum. And it was a really nice feeling when I realized that, oh, the game they want you to go fast. They want you to go. They're not scared of having really zany movement to where like, oh, in any other game, if I fell off here, I would have fallen into this pit and died. But at the last minute, I touched the wall, I start running for a bit, and then I jump over to this thing, and then I jump over to that thing, and then I run around this thing and over there and off of that. And then you actually end up getting to where you wanted to go. Just purely with movement mechanics. Like, oh, that's fun. It's really enjoyable. It's a little, the acclimation process, didn't really take that long. You go through a little training area at the start. It felt like, I wear really heavy boots all the time. I always wear hiking boots, right? And occasionally I'll have to wear some other shoes. Not very often, but I'll have to wear something else. And it kind of feels like when I do that, like when I go to a much lighter shoe, because I don't realize how heavy my boots are until I happen to be in something else, in something much lighter. I feel like every single time I record, I have to mute a Discord server, and it's muted. So where was I? This game has just it's so much fun to move around in that game. They give you a lot of really cool environments. There's some great set pieces where I don't know. Am I cool with spoiling the story? I don't know. I'm not sure. Usually I'm fine with it, but I'm like, man, you should really check it out. It's fun. It's really fun. It's not like the craziest thing ever in the world. It's not the most revolutionary, different type of story. It's very blockbuster-ish, but for what it is, it's really, I think it's pretty solid. It mainly focuses around your relationship with your mech, which I think that was a good call. Because okay, what's the core appeal of something like this? It's to people who like really big robots. So having the emotional core of the story focus around the relationship between the main character pilot and your robot is a good call. Because I love this fucking robot. I love BT so much. At first it was like, okay, this is the robot. But like, for an emotionless machine, they make him very endearing. There's a little banter. You guys have like, you end up having a little bit of rapport. It's a solidly done relationship. And I felt something by the end. I was like, I love my fucking robot. My stupid ass robot, BT. There's some really cool, fun gimmicks that I'm sure only appear in the campaign. Do I even want to spoil those? I will. This is your recommendation to go check it out. Because honestly, I only paid like $2 for it. But I feel like that was That was worth it. The campaign is great. If you're someone who, I know that there's people who only play like COD games for the campaigns or something like that. If you're that type of player, I think this is totally worth it. It's really fun. There's just like, it's really well paced. You get to do a lot of different things in it. They introduce a couple ideas and sort of unique feeling mechanics throughout, and then they do just enough. They do just enough with it that doesn't really get tired. And I almost kind of wish there was a little bit longer. Like there's portions of the game I'm like, damn, I wish that went on like a little longer, because I was really enjoying it. But it's very fast paced. It goes at a quick clip. I guess that's your warning. Skip to the next part of the podcast. If you care about spoilers for the campaign to a first-person shooter, that's mainly meant to be a training, a training mode for online multiplayer. Anyway, that time shit was so cool. I was not expecting that. When they started getting into weird time travel stuff, I was like, what is it? And usually, man, we're going to talk about Mortal Kombat 1 later. This is going to be so funny. This is going to be so funny to compare these two. Because Titanfall 2 doesn't, and it does it in such a, it's almost blasé about it. It's like, oh, shit, all right, yeah, I guess time travel. I guess time quakes are happening, or whatever. And you get like a device. There's this awesome sequence that goes on for a pretty good amount of time, where you're going through this big facility, and you can freely switch between the present and the past. The present, where it's all dilapidated and in ruins, and the past, where it's fully operational, before all that, where they also have, there might be guards or barriers or something fallen wreckage that's not in one place but in another, a gate that's open or closed. There's also enemies that are in one location but not the other, or one time but not the other. And I want a game like that. There's gotta be, right? There's gotta be some fun time flipping game. What was that Raven Software game? It was like the last one that they did before they went to the Call of Duty mines. Raven Software games. Singularity, yeah. That had like a time theme. Didn't it? I don't know if it was game. I don't know if that was if it really, how much it leaned into that. But it's a good gimmick. It's a lot of fun. And I wish that even a little more was done with it. But what's there is really neat. There's a stark difference. It's fun. It's funny because I really like the on foot stuff, and I almost prefer it's going from that to the Titan gameplay and the Titan combat. It's definitely a different feeling. It's two different styles, which it should be. Titan gameplay, it's a little like more deliberate, if that makes sense. Slower, I think, is fair to call it, at least from what I played in the campaign. Might get crazy in multiplayer or at a high level, but at least in the campaign, you're this big thing. You don't move around the fastest. You can't really jump. You can't really jump. You just sort of auto walk up things that are, a certain height, below a certain height. But you get a lot of weapons that focus on, a lot of weapons and abilities and stuff between the different classes of Titan that require you to kind of stop or wait to lock on to something, or wait for something to rev up, or damage that has to build up, something like that. Something has to charge. They definitely wanted Titans to be slower, more powerful, with a more build up, the anticipation to the build, to the anticipation to the shot or the big blast or something like that, which is it works. It's fun to like absolutely chew away at another Titan's health bar, or just crush like regular enemies underneath you as you can just walk over them. It's great. It's so much fun. The game puts you. It kind of pushes you through a couple different weapons. So, man, there's a lot of fun guns. At one point in this game, I remember stopping and thinking, man, there's a lot of fun guns in this game. I'm the type of guy who I'll find the thing that I like, and then that'll be it. That's the thing that I'm going to use for the foreseeable future. That's my thing. I am not like, oh, let me go experiment for experimentation's sake. I find the gun or the guns or the set of abilities or the character or the class or whatever that I like, and I kind of just stick to it, because I feel like I tend to have very particular tastes. But this game kind of forces you, by way of ammo being unique to each gun, to switch between them pretty regularly. And at first I was like, but I like this one. I like how it feels. I like the sound. I like the rate of fire and all that. But, then I'd switch to another one. I'd say, actually, this one isn't so bad. Some of them I didn't care that much for. I don't like all of the guns, but I liked a lot of them. A lot of them were really fun. I like the, what was it called? The Spitfire, which is like the submachine? It's a light machine gun? I don't know. I'm not a gun guy. There's some fun pistols. I like the Mozambique, which I think actually just shoots tiny little rockets. That was really fun. There's a fun little revolver, which I think you only get in the training mode, unfortunately. Some fun snipers that feel really good. There's a great shotgun that's boom, boom, boom. If the sound effect makes you feel like you're evaporating something. It's great. I think the guns feel really good in this game. And slipping around and sliding and sprinting and wall running and into shooting it feels good. It's a very flow state kind of game. I gotta plug my phone charger in. What the heck? It's not plugged in. Okay, well, turns out I had to replace the whole cord. Great, awesome. Where was I? I don't remember. Man, this game was a lot of fun. There's not a whole lot to say, There's not a whole lot to say. You know what? What else? Some of the environments are really nice. There's some really nice looking and feeling. I just love that whole section leading into the everything about that whole time warp bit. Where at the beginning of that, you're on this big ruined street with these kind of sci-fi looking tech buildings. There's like weird animals stalking around, and it's raining, and there's storm, and you're on like the waterfront. It's super cool. It's got a great atmosphere to it. I just want to go play this game online now. I can't recommend it enough. If you are someone who was at all interested in it, it handles really well. The story is solid. It's got a lot of fun moments. It's just a really fun game. It feels great to play. And geez, maybe later I'll be playing some Titanfall 2 online. Let's see. What do I want to talk about next? I'm already kind of on a roll. I'll just talk about the other gaming thing. Let's see, what's some gaming stuff? Oh, I guess before I get into that, I could talk about a teensy-weensy bit of news, which is that, well, there's a couple things that are just kind of funny that I don't have like a lot to say about. The Microsoft FTC leak. So if you saw this, remember that lawsuit that with the antitrust thing that failed with the FTC and all that, and Microsoft acquiring Activision? Yeah, turns out that Microsoft messed up and they accidentally uploaded the wrong file, or they kept a file up or something of that nature, and leaked a ton of internal documents. This was not the FTC's fault. Someone at Microsoft is losing their job over this. It's funny because the info within is not like incredibly telling. There's nothing too insane there. It's just really funny that it happened. There's a couple things like their planned mid-generation refresh, which people you could have guessed was going to happen, which I think was pinned for next year or 2025, something like that. They're gonna have a new controller coming out, yada yada, that stuff. Not anything that interests me. I'm sure if you're like a Series X or S owner, a Series X owner, might be like pertinent to you, or if you're looking to buy one, might encourage you to hold off. Maybe that will hurt their sales. There's also, now the data's a little bit old. It's from 2020. So some of it is clearly out of date, and some stuff may have been completely scrapped or was just in like a purely planning phase. But there was talk within, because it was around the time they acquired ZeniMax and Bethesda, naturally. So there's a little bit of Bethesda things, little news in there. Namely, either a remake of either Oblivion, I believe? It's Oblivion or Fallout 3. I'm pretty sure those were the two. Didn't say which one. I think it just said like a Bethesda RPG from so-and-so year. Something kind of vague like that, which I could see happening. Fallout 3 or New Vegas could also get that treatment. Those games are kind of considered... I mean, God, Fallout 3 was like 2017. That's over 10 years ago. Sorry, 2007, wasn't it? When was Fallout 3? Am I going nuts? Fallout 3. 2008. Okay, yeah. So about over 10 years ago. Actually, well over 10 years ago. Probably like 15. That's 15 years ago by now. But I think a lot of people would consider that a classic. Same with Oblivion. And hey, if Skyrim can get re-released 100 times, maybe a little bit of a refresh remaster for those games could do them some good. That's it. That's it for that. Something that I probably wouldn't have talked about if not for its proximity to me. The Payday 3 launch. So Payday 3, the highly anticipated sequel to Payday 2, released the other day, and my friend Prox was going to stream it, and I actually was going to... My plan was I was just going to sit down and turn on his stream and, just listen in while he played some new Payday, some new Poodoo, some gay gape P. And I was going to paint my 40k miniatures. And then... So, you may have heard of this. Payday 3 ran into some launch issues. Actually, it's running into some launch issues because it's still going on. The game is nearly unplayable for most people. That's because it is always online, which is a burden and a curse that I can't believe we are still doing in the modern day. This feels like something straight out of like 2014 or something like that. That a game would come out with solo content, right? With content that should be able to be done completely solo. You should be able to do the whole game without any multiplayer. No real significant need for online connectivity or anything like that, and that you would be forced to go online. It's so ridiculous. And not only is it always online, see, that wouldn't have been too much of a problem if the game actually worked, but it didn't. And I noticed, well, everyone watching the stream and Prox noted very quickly that it was taking a really long time to queue into a group for a heist. It was taking like 10 minutes. Taking a really long time. So eventually, I decided, I think I could feel like, okay, things are not going according to plan. I think it's time for Tigan. I think it's time for Tigan to come to the rescue, because that's how important I am. No, I was like, okay, he needs a little support. He needs some support. Because there is no content for him to commentate over. Things are not going to plan. So I jumped on, painted some minis while we chatted. He ended up just playing Payday 2 and Payday the Heist, the original, in place of Payday 3. I suggested that we rename the stream Payday 3 Offline Edition, and you click on it and it's just Payday 2. So I think that's still what it's called on his channel, but that ended up being fun, but he was understandably very disappointed. According to him, he was not too impressed with the betas of the game. I don't know if he got into the original beta, but he got into like the second one or something like that, and he told me later that it was going from one beta to the next, there was almost nothing additional. There was really nothing new in terms of content. And that was a little, like, spooky to him. Like, uh-oh, is this the whole game? And apparently, with full release, there is also besides, I think, a couple new heists, nothing else really. So that's like, ooh, okay, it might need a little work to bring it up in terms of content, at least according to him, but he found that a little disappointing. I'm not a Payday guy, so it's not my snack bar of choice. So I can't say anything on that front. And apparently it's been like 3 days, going on 4 days now, and the servers are still borked. The game is essentially unplayable. And they did it to themselves. It is heavily... What is it right now on Steam, actually? I'm actually curious, because when we checked, it was mixed. Let's just look up real quick. Payday 3. Because it was a top seller. It was a top seller. So the matchmaking issues... The matchmaking issues were completely the fault of just the servers being messed up, just them not being ready, or I don't know what, man. I feel like you should expect a pretty heavy... We've been doing this for how long? How many times? I'm not a networking guy, right? I don't know what work goes into this, or if it's unavoidable. I do know that Street Fighter 6 launched with essentially 0 online issues on day one. I didn't have any issues online. No one else had any issues that I heard. Like a little bit of funkiness in the first couple hours, maybe, but an extremely stable launch on that game. So I don't know what Capcom was doing. We are officially in the mostly negative realm. Let's see, always online, even for solo players, is disgusting. Starbreeze has created an incredible successor to their beloved Payday 2. Too bad you can't play it. Ha 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 ha, servers, what are they? What are they good for? So immersive that you're actually getting robbed of $40 or more to sit on a menu screen. What the fuck happened to the mic? Okay, doesn't look like anything actually happened to the mic. It just looked like it was clipping horribly. What are some other great reviews? Game is fun when you can play it, but I would not recommend buying this right now. I'm unable to get into a game at all anymore. I want to recommend the game so bad, but I can't even play it. I paid $70 for a game I can't play. Obviously, I bought the Silver Edition in order to play the game 3 days early, and the game worked great during this time, and I fell in love with it a bit. But once the general launch released, I've been unable to hop into a lobby with people or play solo due to the online nature of the game. Just, oh my god, when will we learn? I feel like Sammy Classic Sonic fan. When will you learn? When will you learn that your actions have consequences? So that's unfortunate. I feel bad. You know, we ended up turning it, I think, into a fun stream, but I did feel bad because I could tell he's got I think over 1,000, something like 1,500 hours in the series, just between the first 2 games, and so this one being completely borked was a bad feel for him. It was a bad feel. Yeah, oopsies. I want to talk a little bit about Mortal Kombat 1. I have to keep the bit up. Mortal 1 Kombat. Everyone hates it when I do that. Everyone hates it when I call it that. That's what the logo says, guys. I got a comment about someone complaining about the the way I say it on one of the tier list videos. Anyway, so you might be asking, hey Tigan, why are you talking about Mortal Kombat 1? Fuck it, whatever. When you don't even own it. Well, I can have an opinion on it from a distance. What I can say about it is the stuff that I can observe with my eyes. So, namely, this is probably the best looking Mortal Kombat game to me, and I say best looking both in terms of visuals and gameplay. I think the combo structure of this game looks cool. I think there's some really interesting character concepts with just neat stuff. I think a lot of the characters look really cool in this game. I think the cameo system is neat. Not a lot of games have really done there's assist-based games, but this is assist-based in the much more the way that the Strikers games from KOF were. The cameos in this game are like a really souped up version, a really fleshed out version of the Strikers from the KOF 2000 and something games. And I think they're really cool. All sorts of variants and some experimental stuff. There's Shujinko, and Shujinko, he can charge up his bar. He has to charge up his bar, but once he does, he gets to copy an opponent's move, and he has he gets 2 unique cameos where he copies the opponent's technique, not their cameo. He copies their the player character, the main roster character, who otherwise don't have cameo moves, which is really neat. That's a fun idea. And also, if he turns into Shang Tsung, one of them is that he turns into the enemy Shang Tsung's cameo, so he can also steal a cameo move if he's against a Shang Tsung, which is so many layers of weirdness. It feels like a lot of the ideas. There's a lot of things in the game just from description and watching it and seeing kind of how it's played out a bit, that feel like the dev team was interested in making a game that had a lot of fun, unique ideas, and not so much on the competitive. The competitive, we have to control the game flow and all that. And it's I can appreciate that, at least from a distance. I think it's a fun game to watch. It has this very tense, slow-paced neutral, and then once someone lands a hit, it's just combo, and all the combos look cool. It's also one of the best visually. I think that this is a high point. I think this is a high point for the series in terms of art style. Ever since MK9, I think MK9 looks great. I love a lot of the character design choices in it. and I'm a big fan of how bright and colorful it is. That's very Mortal Kombat to me. MK1 feels like it's returning some of the camp element to the series, and I'm someone who likes a healthy amount of camp in Mortal Kombat. I like it when, I think it's funny when Smoke drops a bunch of bombs and explodes the world. And I think it's funny when like Katana gives someone a kiss, or was it someone gives someone a kiss? There's like a couple kiss of death fatalities, and none of them are from Melina, which is weird. It feels like the one specifically who would have one of those, and then they blow up like a balloon and explode. That's fun. All that stuff, like, to me, that's like as integral a part of Mortal Kombat as the gore, is the sort of lighthearted, fun personality in some of the characters. And I just watched, a compilation of the fatalities, because fatalities, they're not meant for you to do in the game. They're meant for you to watch a compilation on YouTube and then maybe do them once or twice in gameplay. And the fatalities are funny again. There's some funny ones again. Every character has two. And one of them would typically be like, oh, I'm going to kill you in a cool, creative way or something like that. But a lot of them are genuinely, like, actually made me laugh. I think my favorite is Shao's, where he picks you up with his axe and then jumps up and spins you around so fast that, like, all your skin and, like, muscle and shit, like flies off. Like, he swings you so fast you're just a skeleton, and you just get a shot, like a stabilized shot on the character's face, and they're just, ah! It's so funny. Like, it actually made me laugh out loud. There's great ones like Gearus's fatality. Like, he's got one where he opens a time portal and it's the opponent's head. That's the back of their head, and he reaches in and he rips their head out with spinal cord attached, and then he beats them to like with their own head, like a baseball bat, and then he throws it into their hands, and they have like a, what? It's my own head? And then the time portal opens up next to them, and then Gearus reaches through and pulls their head up again. It's like a weird time loop, and it like doesn't really make sense, but it's funny. That's what's important. It doesn't have to make sense. It's funny, and it's kind of creative. And that's all I want, There's a lot that I want, but that's a big part of what I want, is just for it not to take itself so seriously all the time. Because I feel like it gets kind of weird in MK11. Like, I feel like you watch all the fatalities in 11, in X and then in 11, I don't know, they have this tone where they're so, it feels like they're so afraid to show any kind of character personality, and every character just, as soon as you hit the fatality button, with your quick fatalities that you bought for like $3.99, they turn into, like, from whatever their character was supposed to be into a raving psychopath who just delights in murder. And it's kind of weird. And you watch them all back to back, and it's a little off-putting. It feels almost sort of close to like gore porn snuff kind of shit. And I don't mind gore, I can handle gore. I don't actively seek it out, but it's not, I'm not super squeamish around it, except for like eyeball stuff. Also 11 had a weird thing with eyeballs. Okay, 11 had a thing with eyeball gore. 1 has a thing with like intestines gore. I think it probably has to do with the way that they do like the models underneath, like the gore models, where 11 they just had some eyeball tech, and then for this one they just got like some really good looking intestines, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of intestine stuff. It's a little like, okay. That's why, if you're curious, so when I was doing the MK9 tier list video, this is like a tangent. I was doing the MK9 like part of the tier list of the big design tier list video on the side channel. I realized, I was like, man, I never really noticed it before, but like all the women in this game have the exact same body type. The exact same body type. With like this, like the same cup size, same with specific. What made me really stick out to me was the way that they all have abs. They all have these like big old titties, but then also like toned abs, and it's very noticeable in the art style. And I noticed that they all have it. And then I looked across them. I'm like, actually, basically everything about them is identical. And then I kind of looked at the roster as a whole, and I was like, hang on, with a couple exceptions, most of the male characters also have identical body types. It's just that they happen to be wearing more clothes, so it's a little less noticeable. But most of them are like very similar in height. They have like the same build. And then I realized, oh, that's not an art style thing. That's actually a technical thing. Because Mortal Kombat, with the fatalities, and especially in 9, with where they introduced the X-rays, they need to have a model underneath. They need to have like a base model underneath the character, to use as a starting point, which like has all of the gore. It's got all the muscle and bone skeleton stuff that can then have the specific, like a template. They need a template for the X-rays and the fatalities. So the art style has to bend around it. There's a couple exceptions, like the games will usually have a character who's got, they'll have a couple exceptions, like the Shokan, the four-armed peoples. Devora, I think, has like an exoskeleton, so like her insides are a little different. The Tarkatans, maybe? The DLC would get stuff like, RoboCop, because he's a robot, has different insides, and I think Terminator 2 also, they did that for him. They'll have like one in every game where they might just like change the color. Reptile is the designated YouTube safe character because he has green blood, so the automatic YouTube filters won't be like, too much red liquid on screen. Man, they're probably really unkind to Kool-Aid commercials. In any event, what the fuck was I talking about? I don't know, man. The gore or something like that? Yeah, I don't know. The fatalities are funny, and I appreciate that. There's some genuinely funny ones. There's some creative ones. They're a lot shorter in general, which I appreciate a lot. I will always take a fatality that's shorter but more interesting over, and then they're gonna do this, and then they're gonna do that, and then they're gonna do this, and then they're gonna do this thing, and then they're just like a fucking pile of limbs on the floor, and you're like, that was a little weird. It was a little excessive. Feels like some of the fatalities in MK11 legit, like the flow between them, and X also. I think it's probably worse in X. The flow between what happens in the fatalities is really lacking, I feel, in a lot of them. Like, it's just the character does a thing and then another thing. Like I just described. It feels like the creative fatalities from Armageddon, where it's like, then I'm going to spin you around. Then I'm going to spin you around. Then I'm going to punch you. Then I'm going to rip off your arm. Then I'm going to spin you around. Then I'm going to hit you with the arm. Then I'm going to hit you again. Like, a lot of them sort of feel like that. It's got some of them that are like that, where it's like, and then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do that. But many more of them have like a concept and a real like flow. A story, if you will. And I appreciate that. It's colorful. There's so many man, you really appreciate NetherRealm's CG modelers and their environment artists. They can put together some fantastic looking character models. And it feels like finally this is the first game where you can actually see them. Like, you can appreciate them. X is, in my opinion, like a real low point in terms of art style. Everything is just, it's so drenched in shadow, just everywhere. And it's like, you guys have some great looking character models. Why are you obscuring them so much? 11's better, but the game's just really brown and a little washed out and colorless, which I don't like. This game is like, boom, like the colors pop. There's so many stages with big blue skies and just these deeply colored nature, like flower petals or leaves, the grass, some kind of magical stuff going on in the background. And man, just looking at the game is so nice. It's a vibrant feeling game, which is great. I really liked looking at this game. I feel very positive about it from an outsider's perspective. If I had the money, I would probably drop it on the game, but I don't feel comfortable spending $70 on a video game at the moment. Hey, patreon.com/TiganMoon. The Mortal Kombat 1 fund. Yeah, just a lot of things that I like visually. None of which is in the Switch port. Yeah, we're going to talk about this stuff. I'll talk about the Switch port, baby. Because it's the funniest thing that's happened in a minute. The Switch... Okay, so a couple weeks ago, like before release, I want to say there was like a sit-down with Ed Boon. Where it's like, here's a bunch of questions with Ed Boon about Mortal Kombat 1. Excuse me. And one of them was, will there be a Switch port at launch? And he said, yeah, and it's running great. And I'm like, oh man, he was covering. It was not running great. If you haven't seen it, I would implore you to go look up some videos or some side-by-sides of how Mortal 1 Kombat looks on the Switch compared to every other platform, because it is shocking. People say PS2 graphics, but you look at a PS2 game and man, you are underselling it. PS2 games did not look this bad, dude. Wow, this should not have come out on this system. Everything about it is so sludgy. All the character models have a ton of detail sucked out of them. A lot of normal mapping and like light maps that are used to add detail are just gone, because I guess the lighting engine can't even handle that. Shadows and lighting are just ripped out of stages or wholesale from characters. Like on some stages, characters have no shadows at all. The textures are a shockingly low resolution, like potato. Like there's mods, for instance. I remember when Strive came out, there were mods that made the graphics worse, that like broke the limiter on how low the level of detail could go and stuff like that. And those are like partially for people with just really weak systems, or it's just kind of a funny thing. This looks like that. But arguably worse. Especially because the game has much more of a photoreal style, so there isn't like a stylized art style to lean back on, if you know what I... Like, you go look at like those like potato graphics Strive mods. The game's still, like, you can tell what the game's going for. In this, it's like, oh no, dude. Oh. Weird. I think the worst thing... So, like, complete lack of facial animations. They've been taken out entirely, which leads to some just bizarre looking, like that screenshot of smoke, just all teeth. It's so weird. All the characters look stiff and lifeless. They have Mass Effect Andromeda eyes. I was like, what is it? Because I was, you're looking at side by side. You're like, why do the faces look so weird? And one of the biggest things is the eye textures, right? Like the irises and such. it's not just that like the texture is a lower resolution. For some reason, they're smaller. Like the literal iris part of the eye. I'm trying to remember the parts of the eye to make sure I get the term right. You know, the main part of the eye, stuff that's not the whites, the sclera. All that stuff it's weirdly smaller on the Switch port for some reason, and it leads to the characters always looking like they're just super wide-eyed. Like that was what Mass Effect Andromeda had, where the characters' eyes were too, like usually if you look at a picture of a person, their irises are typically not entirely visible, like the whole way around. It's not like a fully visible circle. They're usually a little bit obscured at the top or sometimes the bottom, depending on where they're looking, by just, you know, the eye, by your face, or the eyelids. That's like what a natural looking person looks like. And when the eyes are fully, like the iris is fully exposed, that's like almost like an evolutionary thing to recognize that person is particularly intense. And if someone doesn't have any like accompanying expression, they just look really strange. Your brain is like, dude, what's going on with you? What is up? That's not normal. They have weirdly shrunken eyes, and it just, oh man. And now the thing is, I can understand all of this stuff from the perspective of someone at NetherRealm who's like, fuck, okay, WB's handed down this mandate. I'm assuming this was WB. This feels like a WB decision. Maybe it's not. Maybe NetherRealm bit off more than they can chew. I'm open to that. But for now, let's blame it on the publisher because it's more fun. WB's handed down this mandate that we got to get the Switch port out same day. Oy vey. You know? How, like, we cannot get this thing running at a stable frame rate. We have to suck as much graphical fidelity out of the game to get it running smoothly. I can at least understand that because this is a genre of a fighting game, especially something where you can go online, where you can be expected to play it at some competitive level. It's actually very important for fighting games to run at a locked, stable 60 frames per second. That's not just like being a gamer and like a frame rate slut. It's actually very important because fighting games rely on like a consistent measurement of time being 60 frames per second, a frame being a 60th of a second, because it's calculating stuff like frame data, because moves have to come out in a certain amount of frames and be active on a certain frame of the animation and stuff like that. And especially if you're going online, if your console is dropping frames, that causes a lot of issues. It's called Rift. It's called Rift when there's some like actual inherent frame rate drops. Like if the console, this will happen, you know, typically when the console might get overheated, you start dropping frames. And it causes some weird shit, especially with rollbacks. When you're on rollback netcode, some, I think, potential desyncs are on the table. So sacrifice, I can at least understand the way that it looks from the standpoint of trying to get it at a stable frame rate. Unfortunately, it doesn't run at a stable frame rate. Oh, man. Dude, and it's not even like, oh, it's dipping to like 55 or something from 60. Like, barely, not even perceptible. No, it's like very frequently dropping to like 20 and stuff like that, especially during any kind of move with a lot of particle effects. Anything that is, anytime you start working the system at all, like a faint breeze, it starts just choking and gasping. You just want to put it out of its misery. Just like tons of screen tearing. There's visual bugs. I've seen stuff where weird stuff. Like you're walking forward, and depending on where you are on the screen, the other character is like zooming in and out from the background. It's really weird. I don't know how to describe it. It's like they fucked up. Something's fucking up with like the layers that the game works on. There's this clip of someone, I think, playing Sindel, and they walk forward, and you can't see the opponent character, but they start walking forward from one side of the stage, and all of a sudden, as if he's on like a track, Shang Tsung kind of slides in from the foreground at an angle, and then as she's walking, he just starts sliding into the background. Like, I don't even know how that happens. Might have like a weird thing to do with the resolution, or I've got no clue. Issues where characters like clothing starts stretching and like sticking in place, you know, like it's stuck in one place and the texture's stretching, like not the texture, but like the model, and I guess the texture alongside of it. Just oof. In the story mode, transitioning from gameplay to cutscene or vice versa is really rough. Some of the most insane visual tearing I've ever seen. Like, hey, you want to know what tearing looks like? You don't know what that term means? Go watch the video of someone comparing the story mode cutscenes in MK1, and that just the cutscene starts and it freezes. The sound's still going, but the video freezes for a second, and it just gets ripped into like 3 segments. Oh man, some of the worst I've ever seen. And there's just regular Switch stuff, like the shitty aliasing and all that just is just inherent to the console. Oh man. That's rough. And okay, so one of the worst the part where you start getting into like, I could see like a potential civil suit or something like that, is that if you bought this game on the digital storefront, which I'm sure many people did, there was no way, at least on early day one, to know about any of this, because the store page on the Nintendo online shop, whatever they call the eShop, I think, they always have a new name for it, had no screenshots, had no videos. It was just the game's like main render with Liu Kang and the logo and all that. So if you bought it, you spent $70 or maybe more if you got. I think it's probably like a bigger package or whatever, like an $80 package probably. It's whatever. They probably had like a fucking they probably had a $1,000 package where you, like, someone from the company will come over and like, you know, some character artist will come like rub your feet or something while you're playing. And you could have bought that package where they come over and they rub your feet for free. Well, not for free, you know, nothing's for free. No such thing as a free foot rub. That's the old expression. And then you would have booted it up and would have been a complete piece of shit, and you would have had no way of knowing. When I say like there's like a false advertising claim here, because there was actually a trailer that got taken down. I think it was like a promo. It was on some Nintendo site or the eShop maybe for a short period of time. Someone found it. It got taken down because it was clearly using the PC version of the game. It was the PC version of the game, or not the Switch version at the very least. Oh, I forgot to mention. Apparently, the Switch version also still has the Steam achievements built in. Like, they forgot to take it out, so you'll do things, and the Steam achievement pop up will pop in from the bottom right. That's bizarre. That's weird. Man, just a complete shit show and a potential false advertising case. The fact that it was deemed okay to release this to consumers is deeply disturbing. It's like, wow. Man, it's been a while since there was a release like that. This reminds me of like Assassin's Creed Unity on launch kind of deal. And the thing is, they could have just waited. I think like we know that the Switch 2 or whatever the upgraded version is going to be, it's coming out like sometime next year. They could have just waited, you know. It would have sucked for Switch owners who were Mortal Kombat fans, but you could have just waited for a second and like a year or so that you could release it on more powerful hardware where it wouldn't be a complete sludge fest. You could have bundled it with the first like DLC pack, which I'm sure is going to be out by that time. Just call it like Mortal Kombat 1 Ultimate Edition or something like that. The Deluxe Edition. And just like include all that stuff as like a delayed release that runs acceptably, that looks fine, that has extra content and stuff like that. You could have just done that, but no. We need to hit the quarterly, or we need to have it on all 3 major systems and PC. Or else someone at the Warner Brothers is gonna die. And maybe they will. I mean, they're hemorrhaging money from a number of very bad business decisions. I'm pretty sure, what's the stat that like Warner Brothers, the company, has more debt than Disney has money? Which is like, and not even by close. They have like 10, it's like 10 times more. Just, how did you do this to yourself? What happened? You know Disney's gonna fucking buy them up. You know they're gonna buy them up. No, they have to stop that. The FTC's got to come in, right? We have to prevent that, right? I don't want to live in the world. I don't want to live in that world. Then we'll own everything. I don't want to live in that world. Yeah, so that's some initial MK1 stuff. I'm going to talk about the story mode now. And please forgive me, we've entered the hater part. Well, not entirely. We've entered the semi-hater part of the podcast. Because it's not an entirely bad thing. So, I went and I watched some it's like the biggest fighting game streamer, man. His Maximilian Dude, the Dudus. Every time an NRS game comes out, he streams the whole story mode with his friends in like a big marathon thing where they all get together and play through it. And I've watched the last couple, and it's always a fun time when he just uploads them in chunks to his YouTube channel. And you know what? I was watching the first couple episodes, I guess you could call it, of the story mode of their stream. And I thought, you know, I'm actually really engaged by this. I actually want to see where this goes. So I decided to just, you know, after the third or maybe fourth video, I hopped over to just his Twitch channel and just watched the rest of the VOD. Just watched the rest of the story mode to see where it went. Okay, so I feel comfortable talking about the story mode of a game and being able to critique it when it's like this, because the NRS story modes, they're kind of just like, I don't think you really have to play them. They're basically movies that are occasionally interrupted by gameplay. You know, cutscenes are named such because they cut away from the gameplay, right? I would call NRS games movies with, like, cut gameplay. Because it cuts away from the movie that you're watching. Yeah, you know, I'm not going to say that me not having done the fights where you know who's going to win the fight because of it's always the character you're playing as. I'm not sure that, you know, don't call me out on critiquing the story without playing it. You don't have to. Everyone knows that. I mean, I think like before the game even came out, there was like IGN just released the entire thing as one movie. It's like 5 or 6 hours long. It's something like that. So I watched it. I have some thoughts on it. I'm going to spoil the whole thing, so if you really care about it, you can skip forward ahead, where I'm going to talk about Follow That Bird. So like 50% of this story is I like it a lot. I actually enjoy a lot of things about it. Is it a little tiring that we're redoing the same characters again? Yeah, but it's helped a bit by the fact that things get a little mixed up, and they did that, of course, in MK9. But I have to say, okay, if we're going to mix it up again, we're going to remix the timeline. Because MK9 was trying much more... I feel like it was trying to do a much closer... we're redoing the original trilogy and all that, right? The NRS games so far have just kind of been rehashing the games with some slight alterations. MK1 feels like a bit more of a wholesale remix until a certain point where you realize what it's actually doing. So how do I even describe it? Okay. The story starts out, and for most of it, it is a very enjoyable, pretty well put together action, adventure, fantasy movie. I think the character work is pretty solid. It's not the most incredible stuff in the world, It's not the craziest, most innovative. I feel like I'm describing Titanfall 2 again. Not the most innovative story. It's not going to blow anyone's socks off. But hey, if NRS likes to be like the Marvel movies, and they do a pretty decent job at it, at least in this game. There's a pretty strong emotional core. I would say the heart of the story is the four real main characters of the game. It's Johnny Cage, Kenshi, Raiden, and Kung Lao. Those are the four characters who are very clearly meant to be the audience perspective. Of course, everyone is familiar with the Mortal Kombat stuff and the Outworld and all these crazy characters. But this is a new version of the world, and these are the characters specifically being brought from Earth who don't know anything about all this magical fantasy nonsense. And we are seeing the story is being introduced to them as it is being introduced to us, right? They are the insert, so to speak. And there's some pretty well done, just, character concepts. Raiden is this humble, small-town farmhand. He's a little nervous to accept the responsibility of being Earth's champion, but he has the potential, right? And Kung Lao is the more hot-headed, kind of a dick, but in I don't know, sort of an enjoyable way. Very quick to think and quick to feel sort of character who sort of balances Raiden's more kind of meek personality out. And then the other dynamic really in that group is Johnny and Kenshi. And I like the idea that Kenshi's trying to get his sword back and Johnny bought it because he's an egotistical kind of douchebag. He's sort of washed up. He's trying to get his career back on track. They reveal his name in this movie. In this game, they reveal that his name isn't actually Johnny Cage. His name is fucking Carlton. It's John Carlton. Can you believe that? That's really funny. And Johnny Cage is his stage name. So Kenshi is you can see the story arcs with all these characters. Maybe not Kenshi as much, but Kenshi is more I would say Kenshi's already kind of figured things out for the most part in the story, and he's more of a flat character, where other characters change around him or because of him. Namely Johnny. And there's some really good stuff in there, I like the introduction that we get to the world. It spins a little too. There's a couple pacing issues. The whole intro to Johnny's character segment where they're doing the Indiana Jones ripoff, that goes on way too long. That's 10 minutes. It's weirdly drawn out for a bit that I called within the first 10 seconds. Oh my god, then the director's gonna yell cuts. Can you believe that? We totally had you right there. I like, Johnny is this guy who is going to be, Wait, what the fuck was I talking about? Yeah, the introductions of the characters, the introduction to the world, we're getting eased into it. We're having characters sort of just, we're passing by, and Liu Kang, who's the mentor, and he plays a pretty good mentor role now. Feels like the character has matured from where he was before. And that's kind of satisfying. You can see how he started out in MK9 to now becoming this character, and it's kind of cool. He'll be explaining something to them, providing a little bit of kind of built-in exposition where, okay, they want to know something. He'll tell them it. It's fine. The introductions of all the characters and all these funky outworlders and their magical ways. I guess there's like a small gripe with the way the tournament is handled. It's really short, and I feel like there should have been a little more dedicated to it. You know what I find weird? It's weird that it's a solo tournament. I feel like they had the opportunity, now that it's a new timeline, I feel like it should have been a tag tournament. I feel like that should have been the idea. That, because, you have the cameo system, have like the tournament in the story be based around two people working together, and then you could do like, it's because it's strange that Raiden is the only one who actually fights. None of the other characters actually fight. I don't know. The tournament feels very rushed, and I kind of wish there was a little more time spent. You could use that to build some of the characters up, right? I think you could. There's some stuff you could have chopped off of this game, and I think you could have reassembled. You could have regrafted that into the tournament. I think it would have been fun. I'm just armchair critiquing and saying I could have done it better because I'm a piece of shit. I think it would have been fun if you did like, have Raiden and Kung Lao be a duo, and maybe they have to switch out. You can extend some of the fights with like, a little more time with, let's say, Kitana and Tanya fight together. And then you switch them out. Tanya, then Kitana for like round 2 or something later that day. And then, you go from like Raiden and Kung Lao cameo to the opposite. Do the same with Shao and Reiko. Then you do, I don't know, work Rain in there at some point. Rain does very little besides get beat up in the story. I thought it was weird that you never fought Rain in the tournament. And then use that to like, then you have Raiden and Kung Lao and then Kenshi and Johnny, and have that push those characters to kind of like the limits of their friendship. I really liked Kenshi and Johnny's relationship in this game. I liked how they were constantly butting heads. They had a very practical, in-universe reason to not like each other. And I really enjoyed the way that it developed, When... It's so funny because, obviously Kenshi has his sight, and that at some point in the game he's going to lose it. But the fact that when there's that whole scene where he actually gets his eyes gouged out by Melina, it's really sudden. I won't lie. I was really taken aback by that. That drew a gasp from me. I actually felt for that. And then that whole segment following where he's just kind of dealing with the immediate trauma, physical and mental and emotional, of losing his eyesight. And he's like at his lowest point, and then that's when Johnny kind of starts like, he feels awkward, like he's been just shitting on him and negging him the whole game, and then now it's kind of weird, like he wants to be nice to him, he wants to lighten up, and then he gives him the sword, he's like letting him, well, first he lets him like, lean on me for support, and it's like, when he gives him the sword, it's like, there's a little bit of mutual respect and camaraderie between these characters where there wasn't before. That's fun. I actually really enjoyed that. Again, nothing super innovative, but pretty well executed. It helps that the performances are really good, and the dialogue for the most part is pretty good. Johnny has too many movie quotes. Like, I get it, okay? He's the type of guy who quotes movies every now and again, but they really lean into it to the point where it feels kind of gimmicky and a little, it's a little annoying. Funny enough, the point where that happens is also the point where he stops quoting movies. That when Kenshi loses his eyesight. So that's that coincides with Johnny's growth as a character is like inversely correlated to his movie quotes per second. The MQPS. Yeah, and I mean, even having said that, with it being too much, the actor for Johnny really, he does his best to sell it. I have to give it up to him. He's doing the best he can with some kind of annoying dialogue, which I think makes it a lot more palatable. You know what? All that stuff, I like it a lot. Ever since I did that tier list video, I'm kind of Baraka pilled. I'm really into Baraka now. I think he's actually kind of a cool character. I was going back and just looking at him throughout time, and I'm like, I like Baraka. I'm kind of upset that he's been shafted historically throughout the series lore and gameplay-wise. He kind of tends to suck gameplay-wise. He gets some cool stuff in this game. He gets this whole moment where he's communicating with, like, they meet him, and he's actually, like, a respectable, noble guy. He isn't just snarling monster man. He has this kind of tragic backstory with his family dying to the Tarkat disease. When they meet Reptile later in Shang Tsung's, like, Flesh Pits prison, they have that, like, you know, Reptile's a slave, and he thinks that Shang Tsung has his family captive. He's holding them prisoner, and he's just obeying his whims to protect his family. And Baraka, like, he apologizes for it, and Baraka's like, no, I would have done the same for my family. And it's like, oh, Baraka. Big Baraka Obama. And then, you know, when Shang Tsung reveals that he actually killed Reptile's family a long time ago, and Reptile's, like, furiously angry. Oh, okay, that's another nice emotional moment. I kind of felt that. That was good. And you sort of feel like, yeah, a lot of these characters, I like them. Once they start adding, like, Ashra into the mix, she's like, okay, I get Ashra's deal, but she's a little like, I'm showing up and expositing what my character's deal is. And she doesn't really do that much in terms of the plot. She's sort of there. I think they kind of struggled to work her in cleanly. All that's nice. I was like, man, I'm actually quite enjoying this. They resurrect... Well, they don't really resurrect. They form Ermac. They form Ermac out of all the souls in the living forest, which is a neat idea. Was that what he was before? Dude, what the fuck? Is something burning outside? I smell it with my sniffer. Is someone burning some... I'm going to go check the kitchen really quick to make sure an elder isn't going to burn the house down. No, I am safe from the elderly terrorist in my home. All that stuff is really good, you know? And little gripes here and there. I was talking about Ermac and all that, and that stuff feels like a little contrived, like we just kind of bump into them and all that, but I was really enjoying it. I was feeling it. I'm like, okay, where's the story going? I want to see where these characters go. I like this plot with this kind of Shang Tsung who should have been a loser, you know? Liu Kang remade, because it's always these fucking sorcerers, man. You just never, just don't let them, you just gotta stomp them while they're down. When Liu Kang remade the universe, he made it so that he put things in motion so that Quan Chi and Shang Tsung had kind of loser lives. And they would never really get anywhere or learn any sort of real sorcery. But then, some mysterious figure has entered the picture. And she is definitely not Chronica. And she's trying to... She's giving them new powers and setting them on course. You're like, okay, what's going on here? So you've got Quan Chi and Shang Tsung teaming up, and I'm like, oh, it's like the Deadly Alliance. We got a little nod to the Deadly Alliance. Like, things that shouldn't have been, but now they're getting pushed in that direction. And then you hit like the halfway point, and something happens. Something happens. There's betrayals, there's all this, there's, Sub-Zero betrays the guys, which is like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's Bihan, he's an asshole. He's gonna make robots. Because he's so cold. We're gonna get Cyber Sub-Zero back. And all the heroes confront Shang Tsung. And Shang Tsung's like, yes, I am going to resurrect the Dragon King's army. Oh, like Deadly Alliance again. All right, we're just doing that game again. But okay, we're sort of, hinting at it, and we're echoing it. And then he says, Liu Kang's like, who is this mysterious person who's been setting you on this course? And Shang Tsung is like, I have my benefactor. Their name is Damashi. And I'm like, oh, because so in Mortal Kombat Deception, which comes after Deadly Alliance, the whole story mode of that game is about Shujinko collecting all the magical MacGuffins to stop the Dragon King from resurrecting Onaga. And then, oops, surprise, surprise, you fucking idiot. The spirit that you were doing all this for, Damashi, was actually Onaga in disguise. Woo, 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 what? So that's the deception. That's the Mortal Kombat deception in the title. So when Shang Tsung says my benefactor is Damashi, you're like, okay, we're doing deception, because it turns out Damashi shows up, and it's just kind of like a weird reference, because then it's like, I'm actually not Kronika, I'm actually Shang Tsung from the previous timeline. And I was like, okay, which is like weird in retrospect, because Garrus and Liu Kang are like trying to figure out who this mysterious person is, this Damashi person. They don't even know the name, but they can't like get a face or anything. And Liu Kang suspects Kronika, and Garrus is like, no, I can't even see the face. We can't be sure. So like, why did Shang Tsung, old timeline Shang Tsung, why did he disguise himself if they weren't even able to see him? What's the point of the disguise reveal? It's entirely for the audience and not the characters. And it's so weird, because it would have made sense for them to suspect Kronika had survived, or like a shard of her or something like that. Or at least like been confused as to how she survived. It's really weird that they didn't do that plot point to then have the reveal that it was Shang Tsung, which, like, if they explained that it was Kronika, that would have made the reveal that it was Shang Tsung probably more potent. Well, anyway, Shang Tsung's back from the previous timeline, and it turns out that these two okay, the reasons this would have been really lame, but I'm willing to give it a pass, because it was set up in the last game. At the end of Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath, the DLC, Liu Kang and Shang Tsung have this big fight over who's going to become the new God of Time, or the Titan of Time. And in that final battle, you get to choose who you're going to play as, which means that you get to choose for either Liu Kang or Shang Tsung to win. Now, it seemed like the canonical ending was that Liu Kang won, and that's why he's the god of, former God of Time. Now, he gave those powers up to become just the God of Fire. And then But like, okay, so I guess that's the canonical one. No, as they set up, there is a separate timeline where Shang Tsung won the fight and he remade his own universe. Okay, that at least makes sense. And when they say that, like, oh, there shouldn't be any other timelines, but there is another one, it's like, oh, it's because they had this big god battle in this very particular place, this, like, realm outside of time, Kronika's realm, with, you know, over this crown that could control time. I can at least believe on silly fantasy story logic that this would create some kind of big split. If you want to say, oh, that created ripples in time that created a second timeline, you know? I can believe that time got weird and the events that really happened, you know, there is no really happened. It's multiple things could have happened. That all I can justify. And I'm also okay with this because it's, at least for now, about keeping, how do I say this? It's about, like, dealing with the vestigial remains of the previous timeline. Like, we're gonna fight it and we're gonna stomp it out. Okay. It's not too much for me personally yet. So stuff happens, and it's like, okay, Shang Tsung is going to open up these portals to get, like, an army from another universe, from his own timeline, because he wants to conquer Liu Kang's now that he knows about it, because he's just spiteful like that. Okay, that seems like a Shang Tsung thing to do. He's always been like an underhanded conqueror kind of guy. Kind of a Rasputin type. The Rasputin wasn't like a conqueror. You know what I mean. So there's this whole deal with like, uh-oh, I don't know if we can defeat the big Shang Tsung army. Now remember when I said 50% mark? After that reveal, things start to get a little weird. So might be like the 60% mark, to be honest. I'm not sure exactly when in the story mode it happens. At what hour that reveal happens. But after that, stuff starts to get wonky. And it okay, so there's some weird shit with okay, there's like evil versions of characters. Okay, fine. It's kind of like the Revenant characters or whatever. Okay, you got evil versions of the Mortal Kombat characters. But it's like, okay, Sindel, there's Dark Raiden from MK11, and he's like the only one who looks like his old version, but alright, fine. Brain blanking right now. You're like, okay, you're fighting those guys, and then what point does it happen? Okay, well, there's a little weird footnote. So, okay, Ermac, right? He's like a goon for Quan Chi. And then at one point, Melina fights Ermac and punches him a lot, and then Ermac becomes Jared? It's really weird, because Jared's soul, Melina's father, Jared's soul was in the forest, so it's like inside of Ermac, and for some reason, beating him up let Jared come to the surface to the point where he can control the body, and like the face changes, and what? And I remember, like, that was the point I remember seeing people in like the stream chat going, this is weird. It's kind of strange. So then Sindel dies because Katana and Melina can never have both parents. They can't be happy. But like Jared's still there. And like eventually, like, it's fucking like Sindel's soul also goes into Ermac. So they're both in the body. And I don't like this is weird. I kind of wish Melina had just been left to fend for herself. That seems like a more interesting struggle for the character. I don't like Ermac being a guy. I don't like him being one person. I like him being the collective, right? I emphasize that a lot when I talked about his designs. I like it when he's a collective. In any event, yeah, that stuff's weird, but it's not like the biggest deal in the world. Then there's a scene where all the characters are teamed up, including Shang Tsung and Quan Chi and Shang Chuk and Kinhwa and all that shit. All those people and Shuba Duba. All these characters. And I'm like, alright, okay, everyone, we're uniting everyone. We're bringing everyone together. Okay, that's fine. That's fine, I'm cool with that. Then they're like, uh-oh, I don't know if we can defeat Shang Tsung's whole army from the other universe. And then someone suggests, hey, Liu Kang, you know how Shang Tsung is getting a whole army of people from the alternate dimension? What if we did that? And I was like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean? What if we... I'm like, okay, you mean like collecting everyone together from this universe, right, to fight the other one, right? No. Because in the last, like, third of the story, we jump hard into a multiversal arms race. And it is... Okay. So Liu Kang is like, I gotta go get my time powers back. So we go back to the temple. But then, Shang Tsung is attacking. And... No, wait, hang on. It was before that. He gets his time powers back. Then he's like, let me look through the realms. And he gets an alternate version of Katana. And they have a kissy kiss. And it's like, wait, no, that's not like... They're like, oh, then you're the same Katana. And it's like, no, she's not. She's not the same. She is, by definition, from a different timeline. And then we cut, and he's standing with, like, old Raiden. And different Kung Lao. And some other person, probably. And I'm like, okay, guys... We need to hit the brakes right now. Like, this is a little much, right? And then Shang Tsung appears, and he opens a bunch of portals, and a bunch of evil versions of characters come out, and we gotta fight them. And at one point, he's trying to destroy the hourglass, because now he knows that there's, like, infinite timelines, so he's just gonna destroy this one for whatever reason. I guess just spite. So at one point, there's like a dozen characters all shooting laser beams out of their hands into an hourglass. And I was like, okay, this is too much. We need to cut this off right now. There's still time to salvage the story and get us back on track to what was interesting and emotional about it. And stop going this far to the edge, right? But we gotta stop right here. Okay? So we beat all those people. And then we cut to Liu Kang opening a portal, walking out of the portal. And it's this upside down overhead shot that spins around and pans. And you see a big ass pyramid. And I said, no, please don't do this. Please don't do this. And Liu Kang is standing there with like 1,000 alternate universe versions of every Mortal Kombat character. And he's like, Shang Tsung, this is your chance to stop, or, you know, something. And I'm like, okay, no, fuck, please don't go. Please don't do this. We're already too far. We're far. I could see like the boat is sinking and we're not plugging up the holes, dude. The holes are too big. And Shang Tsung steps up and he's from at the top of the pyramid and he goes, ah ha ha, Liu Kang. And then he waves his hand, and a giant portal opens up, and and 1,000 evil versions of the Mortal Kombat characters come out of the portal, and then everyone runs at each other up and down the pyramid in a big action figure fuck orgy. And I was shocked. I was speechless. I didn't even know what to feel. I don't think I have ever seen a story. It's not even lose. It's like jettison from space. Its emotional core so hard. Just so hard. Remember a few hours ago when Johnny Cage and Kenshi, when Johnny gave him the sword because he'd gained a little bit of respect for him, and he realized that his ego was maybe, it wasn't fulfilling for him. He didn't feel morally okay with being that egotistical, at least in that one moment. And he changed a little bit. Do you remember a few hours ago? The really weird thing actually comes a little earlier, when there's a bunch of characters fighting at this like other portal thing to stop the army from coming through or something. I don't even know where the fucking pyramid is. Where does it even happen? What is that location? Because there's this place with all these other portals, and there's this weird thing where Shang Tsung and Quan Chi fight some like alternate, they find out like, alternate evil version Shao Kahn, his life force is like keeping the portals up, so they just kill him, like they fucking zap him after like Raiden gets, I think, beat by him or something like that, and they fucking they crush his head, they do something brutal, and Raiden's like, nice! And that was really weird to me. That was like, remember a few hours ago when Raiden was meek farm boy who wasn't ready to take on the responsibility of being Earthrealm's representative, their champion, when he was a little precocious about getting the gauntlet that would give him the talisman that gave him the power over lightning, and he was beginning to accept his responsibility in a tournament where explicitly the combatants don't die. It's not to the death anymore. Well, now you just saw someone get his fucking head crushed, and he's like, that's kind of sick the way you did that, dude. I'm actually really into that. That was super bizarre. And that was like a moment, that was like, I feel like where the drift really started. Where, dude, by the time this fucking nonsense at the pyramid happens, I don't think we've seen Kung Lao, like our Kung Lao, the actual Kung Lao, for like 4 hours. I don't think Johnny Cage or Kenshi have been seen in that time either. Have they had a line? Oh, sorry, there's one line where Johnny uses his drone, which was set up at the beginning of the story. But like, just completely dropped. Are they to the like where they aren't the main characters anymore of this story? And I get that like the overarching story of all the games is like Liu Kang and now he's the god of fire and shit. But like, I don't care about him as much as I do the other characters. At least here in this context. And it's so bizarre. It's just, I was watching it the whole time, and it's just this completely hollow, emotionless thing. Which is weird, because there's like some fun stuff in there. There's some fun ideas on paper. Like all these alternate versions of characters that are like fused and combined. Where it's like Scorpion and Kung Lao, and he's called Stung Lao. Or Garrus and Reptile, and he's called Clocodile. Like, I like that in its own thing, in its own little area, but we never see like what the actual main character, those 4 characters, are doing, or what their reactions are. Are they even in the crowd? Like, I can't even tell. You can play as them if you want, but if you're playing as certain characters, like, you get the selection of the whole roster, but if you're playing as certain characters who aren't supposed to be there, or who, like, if you play as Liu Kang, for instance, it's not the actual Liu Kang. You're playing as an alternate version of Liu Kang. You go through this whole gauntlet, and you're not even playing as the real Liu Kang. You're some alternate version. And it's like, man, I'm watching the craziest shit ever that in a different context would be really fun and enjoyable, but I feel absolutely nothing besides just kind of remorse at the dying embers of a story that I wonder why it was even told in the first place. Why did we have to do Armageddon again? Why did we have to do... when Mortal Kombat Armageddon came out, that was the 7th game in the series of a continuous ongoing story and timeline. That was the 7th game, and it had every single character in the series up to that point in it. All of them. And the ones that didn't exist before in the 3D style, because there was a lot of asset reuse in that, were made wholesale. Were made fresh. Fujin, Stryker, bunch of random characters. It had meat. Like weird little fun homage kind of in-joke characters, honestly. It had mocap. It had everyone in it. This is doing Armageddon again, except with one game of setup for the world and the main characters, quote unquote, and also like a quarter of the roster. And it's so weak. It's so weak. It feels so fucking lame. Just, man. I can't think of something that just devolves so hard into utter schlock. Just absolute, man. This is just garbage. And it's disappointing because it wasn't like the story was meh, and then this is like the only fun thing that's happened, right? No, the story up to that point had been pretty good, all things considered. I think if they just reined it in a little bit, had a little bit of self-control, and they just be like, okay, we gotta fight the alternate evil versions of these characters, but it's not gonna be, it's just an excuse to, have some characters to fight, because we aren't gonna be splitting up the characters into like this faction versus this faction or anything like that. And then, we're gonna, so everyone's gonna have like an evil counterpart or two to fight against, and it's gonna be room for, like, we're gonna get some it's gonna be a battle, but there's gonna be some personal level to it. It's gonna be a little more on the ground. There's gonna be some character development during it. I think it could have been fine. I think it could have actually brought it home with, okay, we're going a little bit, we're pushing it a little bit, but I think that would have been solid. I think it would have been fine. This was just, man, so fucking lame. And then, like, they beat them, I guess, and then it's over, I suppose. And then you get this scene to wrap up the story in like a pub or like the tavern from the beginning of the game. And it's those 4 main characters, and they're sitting around with Liu Kang, and they're having this dialogue scene, and it's like, man, in isolation, this is a really nice scene. The dialogue is good, the performances are good. It's very sweet. It's kind of wholesome, and it's a nice way to wrap up the story. But the whole time I was watching it, I couldn't feel any of that. These characters who I'd actually felt something for before, I couldn't feel any of that. Because the only thing I was thinking was, fuck you for trying to pretend to be a real story after that. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. You don't get to do this. You didn't earn this. You earned it, and then you gave it up. You forsook it. you completely botched deserving this kind of emotional catharsis. To have some fucking weird nonsense where we're redoing MK Armageddon, which I don't know if anyone actually wanted. Oh, we got to do all the 3D games in one game. Except that's very different from doing the original trilogy in one game like MK9 did. Because the original trilogy is like, yeah, it is a lot to pack into a single game, but at least has like a beginning, middle, and end. The 3D era is like, the escalation is so insane by the end that it's like, you need a little build-up if like the next game was Armageddon. Or there was like a bunch of DLC. If this game was a game that they were going to support for a really long time, and they were eventually going to DLC like the whole Mortal Kombat history in there. Are there any new characters in this game? No. No, there is 0 new characters in this game. That's really interesting. I never thought about that before. There are absolutely no new characters on the roster. Everyone is returning. That feels like almost like what they wanted to do. Like, have a couple seasons of DLC, add in at least a good chunk of the cast in terms of either main roster or cameo fighters, and then do like the DLC thing like with Aftermath, but it's like MK1 Armageddon, and that's like the end. Why did it have to be so absurdly rushed? It's weird. It's weird and really disappointing. And I don't know if I'd be... At one point in my viewing experience, I really cared about the world and the characters. And now I don't know if I really care to see them again. It's kind of been sort of tanked for me. And that's unfortunate. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Do I have anything else about the story? I don't know, man. Just very bummer. Just a real bummer. I've been talking for a while. Let's keep going. I want to talk about some other shit. Let's get to something that I actually kind of enjoyed. Kat and I decided to... Kat said, she said, I don't want to do the Nickelodeon Marathon right off the bat. So she picked 2 movies just at random. Well, one of them she'd pre-selected. The other one she picked. It was Follow That Bird was the one she picked. I don't know why. I think she Follow That Bird is the first and only, maybe? No, probably not only. Theatrically released Sesame Street movie. I think she was thinking about Sesame Street because they just added a new Muppet to Sesame Street who's like an Asian American, and she was like, "Babe, I'm a Muppet now." I was like, yeah, you are a Muppet. So she was thinking about Sesame Street. I've never watched Follow That Bird, and I don't think she'd ever seen it. Maybe when she was really little or something like that. It's cute. It's wholesome. I don't know how much there is to really go into. It's not a particularly deep movie. Follow That Bird. It's about Big Bird. Okay, so here's something that kind of blew my mind. Because at one point during it, because the movie's from '85, and I asked, so does Elmo show up in this? Is he in it at all? Because he wasn't showing up ever. Like, he wasn't in the whole movie except for like one shot at the very end. And this was well before that. And she told me, I had no idea that Elmo was not like a formal part of the Sesame Street cast until the 90s. I thought he was in there from the beginning. Apparently Big Bird was sort of the main character, like the main Muppet on the show, for at least from her description. And then Elmo was introduced in the 90s and became so popular for whatever reason that he just became the main guy. He became that guy. He became the HMIC. He became the head Muppet in charge. So that kind of like blew my mind. like genuine, I was like, what the fuck? Okay. And because I am not, and she was acting like I should have known that. She was like, yeah, he wasn't just till the 90s. You didn't. It's like, no, I watched Sesame Street for maybe 3 years when I was in diapers. My exposure to Sesame Street is pretty much, my knowledge is basically contained to the show that aired from 2000 and probably 3, I guess, is when I was exposed to television. 2003 to 2005 or 6, maybe. Yeah. No, I can't say that I'm a Sesame Street lore expert like she is, because she loves baby things. It's about Big Bird. Some absolute bitch, some bitch of a bird, coming in and convincing Big Bird that he needs to go and abandon his community and live with other birds. And then he goes and he leaves, and it's all sad, and then he moves in with these dodos who are too stupid. They are too stupid to like even live. I don't know how one of them holds down a job. He has a briefcase. So I imagine he has a job. And he moves in with them, and he's like, man, this sucks. I need to get back to Sesame Street. So he goes on this whole road trip adventure to get back. He's on the run. And it's a two-sided, a double-headed chase, because the Sesame Street gang is trying to meet up with him to get him back to Sesame Street. So they're going one way, and then the lady from the adoption foster whatever agency is going. She's trying to track him down. She's going the other way, and then in addition to that, these two fellas, the Sleaze brothers, who run like a carnival, are trying to catch Big Bird to use him as a circus attraction, a carnival freak show attraction. So you got it's a mad world. It's a sesame world. Sesame Street. Whatever. Yeah, and I mean, it's not a very deep movie, but it's, it's enjoyable. It's just in a way that's like, I'm watching a piece of children's media. The Muppet characters, I have to admit, the Sesame Streeters, the gang, they're pretty enjoyable. Like, I love Ernie. I do love me a little Ernie because Ernie's kind of like, he's kind of like me for real. For real. Where he makes a little joke and then people groan at him. Snuffleupagus. Snuffleupagus is in this, and because he's Big Bird's. I also didn't know this. Snuffleupagus was originally Big Bird's imaginary friend, basically, and then he's like real or something. And he's like watching over Big Bird's stuff while he's gone, and they meet up. I love Snuffleupagus. He's my favorite, because I had the what is it? On Top of Spaghetti, I think is what it's called. On Top of Spaghetti. With the big meatball. Snuffleupagus with the big meatball. When I was a kid, I had that on VHS or something like that. And, so I have like a memory associated with it. And then also, he's just a big fella, and I love big fellas. He's all fuzzy. He's a big elephant or like a mammoth or something. Well, technically he's Snuffleupagus. Also, his name is Snuffleupagus, which is a great name. I love that his name is that. I love him. And he's in this movie, and that's pretty cool. There's I don't know, it feels like at points they're trying to like bulk up the runtime a bit with a little bit of filler. Am I really going to complain about filler in a Sesame Street film? Yes, I am. where there's just some scenes specifically with like Oscar, the Grouch, the Grinch, where it's like Oscar's gonna take a road like a stop because he doesn't care and he's like a weird misanthrope. And nothing really happens to the plot. Like, it's never really important. It just kind of happens. It's just like a little side thing to fill time. I really like the Sleaze Brothers. They were played by these two guys from SCTV, Second City, not South City, Second City TV, television. And the guy who plays, they have a bit of a Three Stooges minus one dynamic where there's kind of one dumb one who's just sort of follows the other one who's kind of smart in a way. He's crafty, he's foxy. And the smart one, the Mo of the group, the Mo Howard of the group, he's great. I think his performance is actually really funny. If it was like a lesser actor, probably would have played it a little more generically because he's just kind of like a greedy bad guy with some, but he's like also a bit of a dope. He's a Mo Howard type character. But the actor really like nails it on the delivery, and he delivers the lines in like a way that's just interesting enough that it's like kind of funny. There's some random musical segments. Apparently the actress for Big Bird cried during Big Bird's sad song where he gets captured. I don't know. It's Follow That Bird. It made me feel good at the end. Elmo shows up in like one shot and I'm like, there he is. Oh my god, it's him. I think you could still probably show it to kids today, and they might be a little confused because it's like a different Sesame Street cast. I was a little confused because I didn't really recognize most of them. I don't even really remember the human characters that were on when I was a kid because it was so long ago. But like, yeah, they're there. I imagine to kids at the time all of these were familiar faces. But if you show it to a kid now, that might be like a bit of like who's that? That's not Geronimo. I don't know who's on the show now. But I think a kid overall would still like it, and they could. It's not going to be like, oh, what's going on? Because it's got all the Muppets, and really the kids care about the Muppets. The human characters are there for like diversity points, for like, oh well, because kids need to see. They got to see people of all different shapes and colors and disabilities and cultures, but like really they want to see the Muppets. Like they want to see the Muppets. There's some like progressive themes in this. Sesame Street's always been, jumping off of that, Sesame Street has always been like a kind of a liberal show. And I mean that in like, I feel like when you say that, there's like a weird negative connotation, or like, I don't know, like I'm saying it with a negative connotation, but no, I mean, it's always like, everyone's like special and, and everyone's has like something, you're special and cool, and people come from all walks of life, and, all coexisting together in a diverse community. Like, it's a very liberal show. And I thought it was interesting that the villain, I guess, the ostensible villain, the bird from the foster agency, is, like, against race mixing. She's against Big Bird living with people who are not birds, who are not other birds. I don't know if that was intentional, but I thought it was kind of funny. It's like, oh, she's pulling a little, she's like a bird Theo Beale. She's Theo Beak, Theodore Beak. We have to separate the races because that makes me scared. Oh no, I'm gonna see a black person. Oh, what if they play rap music? No! I can't tell what they're saying. They're talking too fast. Yeah, anything else about this film? Not really. It's just generally enjoyable film, to indulge a little childish media. And then after that, we were going to watch the movie she picked at random, just randomly off of her shelf. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is so funny because we were talking about it because we just had the Tarantino thing. And then I said, I don't want to watch a fucking 2-hour and 40-minute movie. I was just kind of tired. I don't know. I didn't have it in me to watch a long ass movie. So we spun the wheel, and hey, guess what? It's a Nickelodeon marathon. Nick. Oh, I gotta be really careful when I do that. Nickelodeon. So we spin the wheel, and you know what? Kat was telling me she was kind of dreading spinning the wheel again. Because at this point, we've kind of gotten most of the good movies out of the way, and it's kind of just garbage from this point onwards. We spun the wheel, and it landed on a very special film. Avatar, The Last Airbender. Ooh-wee. So, neither of us had watched this movie. The I want to say 10? Or 2009? M. Night Shyamalan live-action Last Airbender movie. Avatar, The Last Airbender. Avatar, The Last Transgender. The Last Gender Bender. Yeah, see, that's right off the dome. Neither of us had seen it before, but we were both familiar with the show. I watched a decent amount of it when I was a kid while it was airing. It's kind of hard when something's on TV to catch it. I think it was pretty much over by the time. When did it run? When did it finish airing? ATLA air, not Atlanta. God damn it. Avatar air dates. Hey, there was a game that came out. For Avatar. Apparently that game sucks ass. That's unfortunate. It just happened. 2005 to 2008. So yeah, I was it was just barely before my time. And around that time, let's just pin 2006, 2007. I was 5 and 6 years old. No, wait, 2007, I was 4. Is that right? Yes. No, I wasn't 4. What the fuck am I talking about? I was 5. Big difference, okay? So it was a little bit. It started airing when I was 3 and it ended when I was 6. So a little early for me to be cognizant of things like release schedules and new episode premieres, but I did catch it quite a bit as it was in syndication. I've seen a decent amount of the series. It's also structured in a way where you can kind of just catch an episode here or there and have a general idea of when it takes place, and it's not the most confusing thing. It isn't every episode is so inherently linked back to back that it would just be total nonsense if you skipped around a little bit. A lot of the show, from what I recall, is fairly episodic, with some overarching plot lines throughout the seasons, which is just something you had to do back when something was on network television, because that's just how syndication works. You can't guarantee. You can tell an overarching story, but you can't guarantee that everyone's going to be watching it front to back like that. So you sort of have to write it in that way. Which is kind of something that doesn't really exist that much anymore, at least in the age of streaming services. In any event, I have a pretty decent memory of Avatar. I remember it being great, and I don't have to tell you to go watch it. It is a great show. I remember it being great. I watched it a little more when I think it was just on some reruns when I was in middle school, and I watched it again. And it's a good show. Kat watched the whole thing, I want to say, in like a box. She got like a DVD box set of it as a gift, I think, when COVID happened. So she binged the whole series a couple years ago. She loves it. I think it's universally agreed upon to be like probably one of the best animated shows of all time at the very least. Maybe one of the best like shows on network television, depending on who you ask. And it got this live action adaptation of about the first season. Now, what can I say about the live action Last Airbender that hasn't already been said about it? I don't know. This movie has been... So first of all, yeah, this movie fucking... It's really bad. But it's bad in kind of an interesting way. It's a film that fails to sell itself at literally every single point. It feels like a bullet point checklist of the first season of the show, but it's lacking absolutely everything that actually gave the show like some meat. It's all the bones and no meat. Like, it's a very hollow experience. I think one of the most shocking things that I remembered, funny enough, from like the Nostalgia Critic review. There's a scene where the first scene where Ozai shows up. Now, if you remember, or if you aren't familiar in the show, Ozai is the Fire Lord. He is the big overarching villain of the entire series. And the Fire Nation is always presented as this looming threat, this big military power that is capable of incredible destruction, and Ozai is the emperor. He is, and for the entire, I was like, isn't he kept in like, don't they not even show him until like the third season? And like, yeah, Ozai in the show, I think you might like hear him, but you never see him. He's maybe like draped in shadow or something, but they hold off until like the third and final season of the show to actually reveal him, because he is supposed to be a big deal. He's supposed to be a huge deal. This is the fucking big bad. He is the Darth Sidious of the series. And the moment that he appears is like supposed to be a big drop. Like, shit is really serious. This is the most powerful dude ever, and Aang has to figure out how to overcome him, right? In this movie, he just kind of shows up, and it's just a guy. He's just kind of standing there, and then he's walking, and he's given absolutely zero fanfare. I remember pausing it to go like, Kat, this is Ozai, and she fucking like, her jaw dropped. She was like, what the fuck? He's given absolutely zero weight. He feels like the least important guy in the world, which is the direct opposite of what he was in the show. And that's what I mean when there's just so many... The whole thing is so empty feeling. He should be getting... If you're going to show him, which you shouldn't in this movie, but if you're going to, he should be getting like an insane introduction. He should be getting Darth Vader walking down the hallway with the Imperial March kind of introduction. There should be some insane, intense lighting. There should be a mood. There should, things should change. You should know immediately that this guy's the big bad if you're going to introduce him right now. Because obviously, you don't make a movie called Book 1 and not expect to make books 2 and 3. And like, I have to wonder, what was the plan? What was the long-term plan, if there even was one, to adapt the rest of the series? Because you blow so much. You blew so much in this film. Specifically that. I don't know. Maybe there's not too much other stuff, but there's some weird jumbling around. They take the Blue Demon episode from the show, which I think happens in like season 2 or 3, like much later on, and they plop it down in here for some reason, because there's not enough actual interactions between Aang and Zuko. as there was in the original, like, first season. So they're like, oh, we have to have them do something together. And it's like, I remember when that happened in the show, that was really cool. And it felt like a serious turning point in their relationship. And here it's just kind of like, well, we need them to, like, interact because I think they met one time before this. Man. Oh yeah, the performances are fucking awful. So the casting's really bizarre to begin with. There's been a lot of weird race swapping going on, race changing. So in the original show, the Water Tribe was very much based off of like Inuits and such, kind of like, you know, dark brown, sort of Asian looking, you know, Inuit peoples, right? But here they're like, there's a couple that look sort of like that, but all the ones with spoken dialogue are white. Just straight up white people, which is like weird. Are they adopted? Why are they like that? It's like weirdly whitewashed, and it's strange because not everyone in the movie is whitewashed. It's just like a consistent weird swap. Like, okay, the Fire Nation were always depicted as a let's say West Asian, maybe Chinese. I want to say they were more like Japanese. It was like a smorgasbord of various real-world Asian cultures. Like, I want to say that, like, the Earth Kingdom was more... No, the Earth Kingdom, they had, like, the geishas, didn't they? So they were, like, a little more Japanese, I think. And then the Fire Nation... Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably getting a little bit of this mixed up. Fire Nation was, like, Chinese. But here the Fire Nation is, like, South Asian? They look Indian, which is really odd. And it's almost like it's a very intentional thing. Like, everyone is Indian looking. And M. Night Shyamalan is also Indian, obviously. So it's like, did he recast the villains to be his own race? As like, what is the psychology? What is going on behind that decision? What was he cooking? Anything else? I guess, like, the Earth Kingdom does look, I don't know, suitably, like, they look approximately right from what I remember. Like, racially, it's just so bizarre. I think what were the air nomads? Were they always mixed? Because they're depicted as mixed, which I can at least believe. I'm fine with that. Yeah, but just a lot of weird race swapping that I don't understand, because it's so it's very intentional feeling. It's very, like, to make all of Fire Nation Indian. That's very intentional, but I can't read what the intention was. You know what it is? They're probably Pakistani. That's probably what it was. That was Shyamalan's way of stabbing at them. That was his jab. Now on to the acting. It's bad. So all of the main characters are very poor actors, like impressively poor actors, and in different ways. I was at one point reminded of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place by this. If you don't know, Dark Place is this... I've only seen, like, some clips from it, but I've seen enough to get the gist of it. Was this, I want to say, like, 90s BBC parody series. It was like a parody TV show on... It might have been like a mini-series or something like that. It was like a parody of medical dramas. Called Dark Place, and every one of the actors is like, all of the, like, the main characters, they're all terrible actors, but they're all terrible in different ways, which is actually a sign of good acting. Like, the actors who are playing them are actually on point. They're acting like bad actors, but they're capturing it in such a precise way. It's very impressive, actually. At one point, I was legitimately reminded of that. Like, the kid who plays Aang, holy shit. First, no one can get the pronunciation right on anything. They call it, like, the Avatar, and sometimes the Avatar, and sometimes the Avatar. Like, they go halfway. They call him Ong all the time, even though it's Aang. It feels like he didn't even watch the show. It feels like Shyamalan was given, like, literally, like, the spark notes of the show. And then, the kid who plays Ong is so bad. Sorry, Aang. Fuck me. I said it too. The kid who plays Aang is so bad. And I'm okay with saying that because he's an adult now. And god damn, he should not have been cast in this. I think Kat told me they cast him because he, like, could do martial arts. But, like, man, if I could have picked some shitty martial arts over being able to, like, deliver a line, I would have picked the latter any day of the week. Like, that's to be the priority. He reminded me of, like, go look up Dark Place, You and He Were Buddies. That's what he sounds like. That's what he sounds like to me. You and he were buddies, weren't you? Like, that's what the kid who plays Aang sounds like. I think one scene that encapsulates everything that's wrong with it is the kind of infamous one in the Earth Village, the Earth Kingdom village that's under subjugation, where it's filmed in, like, you could do, like, you could make an entire video on everything that's wrong with it. It's filmed in the flattest, most uninteresting way. The lighting sucks. It's one of the first times that I've been watching a movie and I thought, I'm looking at a set. Like, I'm just thinking of the actors on a set right now. It is failing to sell itself so hard. And not even in, like, you could see, like, that complete failure to suspend my disbelief. It's crazy that it happened with something where they're just, like, in a quarry. It's not even like the effects are really bad because they're in, like, a CG world or something. They're just in, like, a place, like a mountainside. Like, it's a real place. And I cannot buy it as being the place that it is. They got some tents up. All I have to believe is that this is the side of a mountain where some people have some tents set up. And they can't even do that. It's like the kid steps out, Aang steps out, and he goes, "Stop doing this! The Earth Kingdom are a proud and powerful people!" Dude, I was saying, they should have got this kid. They should have got this kid. They should have got him to do the America Ferrerica speech from Barbie. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine, like, the whole Barbie movie, and then America Ferrerica's about to give her speech, and this kid fucking slides in, and he's like, being a woman, it's so hard. People tell me that I need to stand up for myself, but then you're bossy. Can't even do it, dude. It's so fucking ridiculous. And then it just, like, the scene, it just keeps going, and I could see what he's trying to do, where he's trying to have this one long take of this whole action this thing that just rolls into this action sequence, like this speech that rolls into this retaking of the prison camp. But then, like, you pan over, there's, like, 6 dudes, and they're, like, doing this fucking improv, like hip hop breakdancing and they into this motion, and it results in like a single tiny rock being lifted off the ground, and then another guy has to come in to shoot the rock. The bending in this movie sucks ass. In the original, I remember in the original, the bending was always very kinetic. It was very dance-like. Like, you could tell that it was based on this idea of the body being connected to the elements in nature. And you could see the way that characters would stance up and then move and shift their bodies, and they would gesture, and you could see the way that like the elements would work with them. When someone would bend fire, they would like collect it. They would do this motion like they were collecting, and then there was like this fluid push, they would send it out. When someone's bending like stones, they like plant their feet super hard into the ground and like the stones shoot up, and you can feel like the dispersal of energy in the way that the characters use their bending. It feels like they're one. You can see just visually how it's an art form. You don't even have to you can just show someone a clip of two people like doing bending at each other, element bending, and you can see the art form just in the way that they move. And in this, it's a piece of shit. Like, it just, everyone does these gigantic over the top breakdance motions, and it results in like the least. If someone did that, what they were doing in the show, they would be doing some of the most like complex bending, where you're like making I'm gonna summon some water and make like a prism and shoot this thing out, like the most complex thing ever that you would expect. Oh, you'd see like a master bender doing all this crazy shit. And in this, it's like, it makes a little fireball. There's a really bizarre thing where none of the firebenders can make fire for some reason. It's really weird. I guess, like, maybe Shyamalan thought it didn't make sense that the other bending styles could, like, that they couldn't just produce, like, waterbenders can't just produce water, say. So maybe he was trying to like bring it in line where like firebenders also have to like make they have to like bring their own fire, BYOF. But I think that like in the show that made it even more intimidating. It was like, oh, like they can just create this deadly power from nothing, and it matches the style of fire, in my opinion. Like, fire is not necessarily a natural thing. You don't go out into the world and see fire unless it started by something. Fire is I watched a video on this. Fire is not necessarily like energy or plasma like it's usually described as. Fire is more akin to it's like a waterfall. It's like a water versus a waterfall, for instance. Fire is a transitionary state. So it kind of makes more sense that, like, yeah, you don't go out and find fire in the world. They would produce it themselves. You could maybe even consider firebending to actually just be like the ability to accelerate energy and accelerate atoms, which is, what starting a fire actually does. Like, that's what they're actually bending. They're just bending the thing on like a very fine, precise level. If you were going to really read into it like scientifically, it's not really what the show is doing. It's more fantasy. But if you're going to read into it like that, that's what you could consider. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it feels like weird, and it's kind of missing the point of what was cool about firebending in the show. Anything else? Yeah, most of the... Okay, so Aang is terrible. Like, the kid is really bad. There's a really funny shot, again, where they're talking... he's talking to Sokka and Katara, and for some reason, Shyamalan thought it would be a good idea to have the closest possible shot of his face. It's like the tightest close-up ever. Oh, a lot of the shots in this movie are very clearly set up to make it easy for the effects to be added in post. Like, we're going to lock the camera down, and any motion? Nope. We're going to do a digital zoom. A terrible looking digital zoom. Oh man, it's all over the movie. And by the end, they start mixing it with slow-mo, and it's so lame looking. The bending looks like shit. It doesn't make sense. The acting is shit. The guy who plays Sokka reminds me of Hayden Christensen in the prequels, but like without the parts of Hayden Christensen's performance that are like good. It's like a shitty Anakin, which is kind of crazy. Katara is like the least... Katara is like... The dynamic of the group was always that, like, Aang is like this kid with a bunch of responsibility, but he's like kind of, he's kind of a goofball, and he's sort of silly. Aang's like the middle point, I guess, between Sokka and Katara, and Sokka's like the big goofball who eventually kind of has to like learn to grow up, and then Katara is kind of like she's the most responsible one. She's kind of like the mom of the group. She's the most serious, level-headed one. And for some reason that's translated in the movie as Katara has absolutely no emotion or character ever. And when she does, it's like the actress, it's like a corpse struggling to come to life. It's so sad. It's so sad to watch. So the dynamic of the group just like doesn't exist. Sokka is like, I don't even know what Sokka's not a goofball. No one's really a goofball. It's like all the charm of the original trio is completely lost. Like, imagine if they were going to do book 2 and Toph was there. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. Like, wasn't part of Toph's character, if I recall correctly, was that she kind of clashed with Sokka? A sucka? Kind of with the sucka? Because she's like kind of like a bit of a moody, kind of like she doesn't like people that much. I'm going off of very old memories, but like I remember that kind of being part of the character, and it would be like 4 of the same character. I remember everyone in the group had pretty defined personalities and roles that they ended up filling. Yeah, the guy who plays Zuko is fine. He's okay. And apparently he got some roles after this, and I can see that. It's not a terrible acting reel. It's actually not a bad performance. There's some really bad exposition where they're like, Zuko, if you remember, he, like right in front of it, he was banished by the Fire Lord, his father, and he's gotta find the Avatar, or something, just some nonsense. Iroh is so weird. He looks like Liam Neeson. He looks like Indian Liam Neeson from The Phantom Menace. He's Qui-Gon Jindian. Very different take on Iroh. I want Iroh. I don't like the casting. It's weird because I feel like the performance itself is actually fine. The thing with Iroh is that Iroh is like the first look that you get into. Iroh is a very reassuring character in the show because the Fire Nation is the most obvious villain like group ever, And Iroh's that one character who's immediately in the show from episode 1, who's kind of plants the seed that like there's a little bit of nuance in the world. It's like, oh, this show isn't going to be entirely black and white. And from what I remember, the show ends up being about how black and white morality is kind of like the unviability of it. And having Iro, this very wise, actually quite sensitive character who is actually like a genuinely good person in many ways in the show from the beginning, and you can feel that from the beginning, is, I feel like, very integral to the character. And some of that is translated into the film. Some of that. I feel like the best Iro stuff was always the parts where he was mentoring Zuko. He was serving as Zuko's father figure, and he was giving him wisdom that he wasn't ready to accept yet. And that was, like, always, to me, from what I remember of the show, the most interesting stuff with his character, is that he knows all the answers, but Zuko's not ready to accept them. And that's, like, an integral part of their dynamic. And there's a little bit of that in this, but it's too compressed. It's there might have been a way, if you retooled it, to have fit in the important beats, but there's scenes in this that I'm like, oh, this is an episode. This is like an episode of the show. Like early on when they go to like the air temple and Aang is like completely devastated by the fact that everyone's gone and it's been 100 years, and it's like a critical blow to him. And I'm like, fuck, I really wish I just watched this as like an episode of a TV show. I wish it had just had some time to really linger and like have the build up, and then you know what's going to be there. You know what's going to happen. And then just to like go through that, to just have that whole emotional process with that character. I'm like, yeah, man, if it was reminding me of how good the show actually was. Oh yeah, the Iro casting. He's too tall. He doesn't look like Iro. I want like I feel like part of Iro's an important aspect, like character design is real. Like it's a real thing, you know? Iro being a kind of short, rotund old man is sort of important. He's supposed to look disarming for a number of reasons. Number one is that, again, he's sort of this view into a different side of the Fire Nation that isn't just like evil foot soldiers. Two is that he's actually like super powerful. He's like a really powerful dude. And that's like a common trope to have, like, oh, the unintimidating looking old man, but actually he's like crazy strong or something like that. And he's just a little too like young and tall and thin, and he should have been a little more modest looking. That was the other thing, is that, you know, he always just kind of wore very simple robes. He's never really dressed in the show like a soldier or anything, because I think he's like retired. Zuko's technically not a member of the Fire Nation. He just gets like a little detail. Essentially, he gets this little detail of men who are shackled to him for his quest, and then Iroh's just sort of there on retirement to help out his nephew. Yeah. The performance is not bad, but yeah, I just I wish the cast I kind of wish the casting was a little better. They get to the big water kingdom city. The Northern Water Tribe, I think, is what they call it. I think that's what it is. We cheered for penis hair. For Dick Neris, as we called her. And, again, completely failing to sell things. There's a line of narration, which there was, like, never narration in the movie except for, like, the opening crawl, which I was like, oh, that's, like, a reference to the show opened with Katara narrating, like, I believe Aang will save us, or whatever. And then they bring in narration because Shyamalan doesn't know how else to communicate the fact that Sokka and the princess fall in love, which I'm pretty sure in the show had, like, multiple episodes. And you actually, like, really got some time to spend in this location with these characters. And Aang learning about water and actually learning from the masters water bending and the philosophy and all that. And all that is just rapid fire skimmed through, just shot through a pneumatic tube in this movie. And it's like, it just, like, it doesn't do. It's too fast. There's like the Netflix show coming out, and I have more. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you need to make a live action thing. It's kind of annoying. Like, well, now it's legitimate. I don't think you have to do a live action thing, but at least it makes way more sense to do it as a series, an actual episodic series, and not a movie. Because a movie, it's just the story does not lend itself conveniently for adaptation. I could see a world in where there's a good adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but who wrote that movie? Who was the writer? Okay, you're not telling me what the writer was, who the writer is. Oh my god. Avatar: The Last Air franchise. There's a podcast? What the fuck is the podcast? Avatar: Braving the Elements is a podcast where the voice of Zuko, Dante Bosco, and the voice of oh, that's just an episodic review thing. Oh, okay. Alright, that's fine. That's cool. Where's the damn film? Last Airbender. 2010 film. Written by Shyamalan. Wow, sole writing credit. That's embarrassing. The film was widely panned by critics and fans of the animated series and has since been considered one of the worst films ever made and took in $319 million at the box office. You know what I want to do? I want to go read some IMDb trivia. It's one of the life's simple pleasures. Airbender movie. 2 out of 10. It's one of life's simple pleasures, is IMDb trivia. Did you know? Let's see. The creators of the show served as executive producers and were initially supportive of the film production. However, both of them ended up being very unsatisfied with the finished product. In a podcast interview from 2014, Konietzko revealed that A, we didn't want it to be done at all. Before anyone was attached, we didn't want it. And then B, if it was going to be done, we wanted to do it, but they weren't going to let us. C, when they attached Night, we just thought, well, this is what we've been dealt. We'll just offer help when it's asked of us, and if not, we'll stay out of the way. In the beginning, it was more positive, and we offered help, but then we had a big falling out. They even mentioned how they gave a lot of input that went nowhere as it all got pushed to the wayside. Huh. Interesting. The film was intended to be the first part of a trilogy, with the next 2 films being based on books 2 and 3. While the film ultimately made a modest profit at the box office, yada yada. Total of $280 million spent on one movie. Therefore, The Last Airbender did not gross enough to have Paramount greenlight the last 2 sequels. However, a new live-action remake, yada yada, the Netflix thing. In the original show, Sokka is a comic relief character. However, no comedy comes from Sokka in the movie, which garnered significant criticism. Dev Patel expressed dissatisfaction with the final film. Who was... Oh, is he Zuko? Yeah, he is. Yeah. Oh, hey. Randomly, we're going to jump back to Follow That Bird. There's a kid who shows up in Follow That Bird. There's a little girl. And what's her name? It's like one of her first appearances as an actress. And she oh my god, where is it? We were looking up her list of roles later, and we were like, holy shit. She's been in a lot of shit and a lot of stuff. It's this little... Where is she? I can just actually look up... Hang on. Voice of... Yeah. Allison Court. She shows up as like a little girl in Follow That Bird for a scene or two where Big Bird like spends a day with some farm kids. She went on to voice Lydia Dietz in the Beetlejuice animated series. She's the clown lady from The Big Comfy Couch, and she's also Claire Redfield in a couple different Resident Evil things. And she's also what else was she in? Some other wacky. Oh, she's Jubilee from X-Men the Animated Series. She is oh god, what's her name? Emily Elizabeth or something? She's Clifford the Big Red Dog's owner. All this random shit that I know her from. That's really funny. She's Megan from oh wait, never mind. I was thinking of something else. That's a different thing. Yeah. All this random shit. Lunette, that's the character's name. She's the clown girl. What the fuck was I talking about? Last Airbender? Oh yeah, IMDb trivia. Yada yada. Oh, there's a terrible sequel hook. There's a terrible sequel hook where Ozai's like, "Oh, you must now go hunt down the Avatar Azula." Oops. Yeah, just an absolute failure of a movie. Like, literally every single thing about it completely misses the mark. Like, it's an impressively, fascinatingly bad movie. Is there anything else even interesting about it? Nah, not really. Man, I'm fucking tired. I don't want to talk anymore. I'm gonna call it a day there. I'm going for almost 3 hours. I gotta eat some dinner. Yeah, well, thank you so much for listening, if you've been listening this far. If you have a comment, feel free to leave it down. Sorry, if you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Excuse me. I'm working on a new video. I made a little side video on the side channel, the Cellar plus R. Check that out, I guess. I have a Patreon. Yeah. Whatever. Goodbye.